So the purpose of this activity right now, the purpose of this video is to see how we do a unified process analysis on our assignment 1. And probably you shouldn't be very surprised if I tell you it's going to start with lexical analysis. So I'm going to start my own Xmind right now. And you have the link. If you need any help installing it, let me know. But I think it's just an executable. I think if you just double click on that exe, it's going to get going for you. So I'm going to say new mind map. And because I'm running a bunch of stuff, I'm running Zoom and Camtasia, it's going to be a little bit sluggish here, but it'll get us there. So we'll call it assignment 1. And it says somewhere in your course outline, in the vocational learning outcomes, I'm supposed to teach you effective thinking. And in my opinion, effective thinking simply amounts to getting good at using tools to structure your thinking, which unified process is one of them. All right, so let's go and study our requirements, right? Because where does unified process start? Where does unified process start? I hope you said requirements, because if we don't have requirements, we really don't have anywhere else to go. So let's start with our requirements. All right, so yeah, it's a group, a project. You're going to write UML Class Diagram because we're going to have use cases. Now, if I try to teach you how to do this without unified process, it would be very painfully difficult to figure out how to do that. I have a chat comment coming in. What's my chat comment? Oh, yeah, so Karthik is saying existing. Yeah, exactly. So good observation. Yeah, that's right. So do all of that stuff. And learning goals to learn how to build an enterprise application. For assignment 2, we're going to take this and actually create Java code to make it work. Maybe not the whole thing, but maybe for a couple or 3 sections of it. And create the UML class diagram to model the enterprise solution relationships. Now, there was something I was doing in my other class just before this one where I talked about this a lot as well. So I'm going to share that information with you because it's very relevant to what we're doing here. Actually, I'm going to keep both overleaves, both LaTeX open, and I'm going to copy it over to your LaTeX. Because that other one is for a course on mobile application project development, and there would be a lot of stuff there that's not relevant to here, but there is a little bit which is quite relevant in terms of the UML piece of it. So we talk here, this is an example of writing requirements. And then we talk about how do we, this is because it's a mobile app thing, how do we talk to a database or a screen outside of our code? That just talks about mediator classes. We might get to that later on. But the thing I wanted to say here is I'm just going to drop this whole thing over to your LaTeX. And some of these examples, you're going to say, what's he talking about? Well, remember, this is from a course on mobile app development. So some of it is not relevant to here, but a lot of it is. And look here what I'm doing with LaTeX. Good luck doing this in Word. This would be very messy, or in PowerPoint. But with LaTeX, it's very easy to take text and reformat it around from one system to another. So I'll make another page here, and I will say notes on implementing unified process. Implementing unified process. I think I have a chat comment coming in. I'm going to go and check it in a minute. And I'll drop all of your code in here. And I'll just go and do an include here. So if you dump out, if you print, when we print this to a PDF, it's going to show up. So we'll say input. Why is input not? Oh, there it is on implementing. All right, so that's something you've got now. Do I have a comment coming in? No, not so far. All right, I thought I did. So let me know if there's any questions. And we have like about 50 minutes, so I think we'll get through most of this. And now they're saying Visio, and I'm saying you can use Visio if you have it, or you can use draw.io, which I'll be using because I think it's simpler and it's free and everybody has access to it. So whatever works for you. If you have Visio, maybe the college gives you a license to it. In that case, that's excellent. Go and use it. But we will be using Word. I'll get you to LaTeX later on. If you want to use LaTeX, that's optional. But I'll say use Word because some students were saying LaTeX is confusing. And draw.io is our drawing tool, which you can get to on the web at http draw.io. And there's some good links. Go and study those links as well. They're very nice. You can go to YouTube and you can search for creating UML diagrams. So there's tons of resources, but I would say the best thing, if you need more learning, make a Zoom call with me, send an email, say, Peter, we would like a Zoom call. And when I get one student request, I'll blast out the time and everybody else welcome to join in there because I can answer it specifically to what you're asking about, right? A lot of these tutorials are great, but if you're coming into it cold and not knowing the backstory of what you're supposed to be using it for, I would say 99% of my emotional energy when I'm teaching this is just connecting students. Here's a UML diagram and here's a problem and bridging that gap. How does drawing a UML diagram actually get you to work in code? And they don't, because that's unified process. And for some reason I don't understand, nobody is teaching it. Well, now I will be through my book, but that's coming out later. And assignment details now. An IT manager was instructed, all right, to do this, that, and the third. So let's bring this over. And I'm going to use LaTeX just because. And you have access to LaTeX. If you want to do it in Word, that's fine. But I'm going to pick this apart. Actually, the other thing I could do is Excel. But Excel doesn't deal well with multi-lines. The formatting is messed up. The nice thing about LaTeX is LaTeX will not mess you around with figuring out formatting. So let's take this and drop it into our LaTeX class journal. Here we are. So we'll make a chapter called Assignment 1, Analysis. I think that's a good word. Now, I just want to pick this apart, and I want to move the sentences around. I want to do the lexical analysis. So the IT manager was instructed by upper management to explore a web service solution, and this is their requirements. So they want to add, they want to do some behaviors, basically, and generate reports, and that's pretty standard. So that's like you have a database and you have a web form and you can add, edit, search. Now there's no delete thing here, but they mentioned in a few minutes we're not supposed to delete data. So we'll see how we handle that. Now the fact that it's based in 45 locations, I don't care. It could be 1, it could be 10,000. So I'm going to erase that because that's kind of, we're not going to consume that detail, so let's get rid of it. But now they're saying using a single secure internal database. All right, well, we're going to have a database, and being secure means we're going to need authentication, so we better factor in user ID and password and ACLs, access control lists. So all of that is buried in the fact that it's and because it's single, that means I don't have to replicate. I don't have to put a provision in place to maintain synchronization of the data. Whoops, I'm talking to my camera, but you can't see me. I was saying being a single database means I don't need to synchronize across multiple data sources. You cannot delete data because of regulatory reasons. Okay, fine. That's why we don't have a delete statement up here. Due to policy, they just have a policy against deleting. The data can be manipulated. Well, yeah, that's the add and edit thing. That's kind of a useless statement. So let's throw away anything which doesn't tell us something we need to do. We already know we're manipulating the data. We're adding and editing it. So that's kind of a useless statement. So let's get rid of that. And the reports will be created through an intranet web portal where specialized users only can access it. So that tells me that I have some security and access control requirements. So I have a requirement to generate reports. So let's say generate reports. And now it's saying detailed. Well, what does detailed mean? Hopefully they're going to specify that, or we have to guess. So we have a deployment mechanism of an intranet web portal. So that's our deployment mechanism. That's how we interact with the users. That's our user interface experience. Remember the user interface, the glass is the user's experience of the system. The reports are created, and we're going to have a requirement for security, so access control lists. So we need password, user ID, and password authentication. And we need a way to identify, right? We need to figure out which resources are going to receive which level of security. How do we do that? Well, let's just remember what I said. Do not think, oh, I'm looking at the camera and you're not even seeing my intense mad scientist stare. Remember we said we are concerned with intentions. We don't care about requirements. I don't care about the requirement. Do you? No, because they're not qualified to tell me the requirement. All the user is qualified to tell me is what's their intention. What do they want? I will tell them what their requirements is. That's why they're paying me all this money. So here we're saying we need to have access control lists for resource access control. And that means we now have a question we need to think about. Who's going to be in charge of deciding which resources get which level of security? I don't even think they tell us that. We have to come up with some service that's going to provision that. I'm setting the access control for each resource. So the data store now bear in mind, what are they not telling us here? They're not telling us that it's a SQL database. It could be a cloud database, Firebase, could be a Mongo database. Do not assume SQL unless somebody exactly tells you SQL. And remember in our course outline or in one of our PowerPoints we read that we should not think about implementation details when we're designing. No. Right now, we're in the analysis phase. Remember, we talked about this concept last week. We said that we have, what do we have? We have analysis phase, design phase, and implementation phase. I thought I had put it here. Where did it go? I'm just grabbing something out of another PowerPoint. Hang on. Oh, here, good. Copy. And the third one here, for some reason, I didn't put it, maybe because I was talking about something else at the time. But the third one we have over here is the implementation phase. So the implementation is where we write the code. Create the data schema for the database. Operating system configuration. Network configuration. That all happens over here. When we're over here in the design phase, we assume that everything is going to work perfectly. We assume we have a perfect database that can stand up to any amount of load, and we have a perfect network that's never going to bottleneck. We assume perfection. It's like when you're getting married. You think this person you're marrying is going to be perfect, and she thinks you're going to be perfect. And boy, are you both in for a disappointment a couple of weeks after the honeymoon. That, however, is another story. So anyway, pay attention to where we are right now. Analysis, gather user stories, create a requirements document, build use cases, which are our tool for doing business process discovery. And design phase, I guess I copied this and pasted it without changing the relevant things here. So we create UML based on a study, a lexical analysis. And so here we say we create objects from our UML entities. That's why I call them UML entities instead of UML objects, because when you're in the implementation phase, you don't want to confuse them with Java objects. Create objects from our and the concept there is in UML. We talked about this last week. A UML entity has a name, and a Java object has a unique ID. The UML entity has data attributes. A Java object has data fields. And a UML entity has intentions, methods, or behaviors. And a Java object has methods. So that's why we can easily forward generate our UML entities to Java code. We can do that. I've done it. It's not hard. You can do CASE, computer-aided software engineering. There are tools like Rational Rows and Visual Paradigm. If you construct a very well-organized UML diagram, you click a button, it generates the code for you. Yeah, you as a programmer are being replaced by a computer, which is kind of bizarre, which is why I encourage you, ladies and gentlemen, become business analysts, become information architects, become the people who go from requirements to design. Because going from design to coding, that's a commodity, right? They can always outsource that. They can find people in another country who will do it cheaper. That's what happened to us at IBM in 2008. They outsourced all of our jobs to countries like Belize and Costa Rica. Very smart people, and they would do the job cheaper. You cannot outsource being an analyst, a business analyst, because they're the ones who have to deeply understand what the customer really wants. You cannot hire somebody and offshore that job. That's a very secure place to be. All right, I have about half an hour. Let's keep going now. So over here in analysis land, which is where we are, we do not assume that's SQL. We just assume that it's something we can give data to and we'll get it back. And the reports are created through a, we also have to have ACL, access control list, user ID, password, access to this. It's only specialized to generate the reports. So do you see what I'm doing right now? I am taking the way they describe the problem and I'm turning it into the way that I need to see it to work with it. Your team, business architects, and so on were called to discuss the design. Okay, good. And the advantage of having a web service solution developed for the enterprise. Well, if it is wrapped up in unified process, it is a web solution architecture. Why? Because UML, see, when we're over here, remember we said this last week, we don't want to know about the implementation. I don't care. I don't care about how it's going to be implemented when I'm in design phase, because my UML design will be so extensible, I can give the design to a DevOps, a network administrator, and she can handle provisioning it anywhere. You know, put the objects on a server in Brazil and put the user interface components on a server in Russia if you want. All my users need is access to an internet connection, and through the internet, it can reach and it can self-assemble itself. So we've already gotten that. So we do not want to know. We don't care, and we want to be agnostic. In the design phase, we want to be agnostic of the implementation. That means we want to be without knowledge. Gnosis means knowledge. Agnostic means without knowledge of how it will be implemented. Agnostic of the details of how it will be implemented. So that's why I honestly don't care if it's going to be a web service. Let it be a web service. If that makes you happy, do it. It doesn't change how I'm designing it. Are you with me? Are we together on this? Whoops. I was doing all these interesting facial gestures and I wasn't sharing my camera. Are you with me? Are we together on this? We do not care. It does not matter to our UML implementation. It does not matter to our UML design how it's going to be implemented. Do I have any questions? I'm down to 19 participants. You know what that tells me? I need better jokes. I think if I had better jokes, you guys would be here listening to me. How is it possible? I'm literally sweating and my head is spinning from tiredness. I'm literally killing myself to get this stuff across. But you 19, you're my chosen 19. You're my believers. You're my followers. I don't care about all these other people who ditched us, because I had 32 people before the break. I hope they find a good job somewhere, because if they're not here, it's sure not going to be doing IT. Anyway, let's move on. Guys, honestly, be truthful with me. Are my jokes making you bored? Is it my jokes? Do I need better material? Oh, thank you, Shugam. Thank you for the encouragement. That's good. I think my jokes are very funny. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the encouragement. I'm a human being. I need a little you go get 'em, Peter, once in a while, so that's great. And the energy that I'm conveying right now is psychic energy. Maybe you don't believe in psychic energy. I have seen enough that I really believe it. And there's an energy. Whoops, again, I'm not sharing the camera. There's an energy that's conveying between us, you and me, right now, that people who are just watching the video at home later are not going to get that. So you guys are good to be here. You're getting the benefit of it. And it's 7:30, which gives me 30 minutes, so let's keep going now. So your team, IT architect, we're tasked by the manager to propose a design. Okay, that's good. We're going to do it. And the advantage of having such a web service solution must be presented in. So that's what we said. Don't discuss implementation. Discuss design. Discuss your component architecture. Once again, I'm not sharing my camera. Discuss your design. Discuss your component implementation. Discuss your UML. It's interesting, really. It is. And provide the UML class diagram displaying classes, attributes, and operations and relationships. All right, this is not relevant. I'm going to get rid of this. I don't need to see this to do my design. And you guys know, right? You know how to jump into this and grab access to this. I've showed you this before. Oh, I already got that, I think. TY. Yeah, that's already there. All right, good. All right, we have 30 minutes. Can we do it? And the answer is yes, we're amazing. We can do everything. But I don't know that we're going to have time to do the assignment, but I'm going to send out a video on that. And I think my video will be comprehensive enough based on this discussion for you to be okay with that. Plus, I mean, in the worst possible case, we can push off the due date if we need to, but I don't think we'll need to. I think we'll be okay. Because I need to move ahead. Because I really, within a couple of weeks, I want us writing serious Java code to implement this stuff. Right. So what do I do now exactly? Well, that's a good question. What I have now is a requirement. It's a user story. Somebody wants this. The manager wants it. And I don't care if it's upper management. Upper management should worship me. I shouldn't worship them. So I'm going to say our requirements. Our team's requirements. So the system shall, because we always start requirements documents with the word shall, provide what? What should it provide? A user interface. Okay, I can deal with that. Maybe a web page would be good. But Peter, oh, you didn't see me do that, did you? So I was saying it should provide a user interface, maybe a web page. Then I went, no, Peter, punish yourself. Oh, that hurt. Because we're not supposed, if you were thinking about a web page, slap yourself on the wrist just like I did. Except not so hard. That really hurt. But you see what we're thinking. We're not thinking on the implementation right now. The system shall provide a user interface of some kind, a user portal is the term they often use, which provisions the following functionalities. Functionalities. And So we'll say with regards. Now, do we have any idea at this point what it is we're actually data managing? Well, they're saying all manufacturing employees. All right, so we know what we're doing. So with regards to data records, now I'm making stuff up. Right now I'm inventing. There's more stuff that I need than they've really told me. And this is perhaps where it gets a bit tricky, because now I have to use my creative technical imagination, and I talk about this in a lot of detail in my PowerPoint on Agile. So I welcome you to go over there and take a look, see at that. Agile project management. Pay attention to this. And on the last couple of slides, they talk about the engine that makes unified process work is appropriate assignment of responsibility, we call it. So where's my slider bar to drag this down? How come I don't see it? Yeah. So here, the engine that makes unified process work is figuring out which is the right UML object to park each data attribute and each behavior into. And sometimes we need to make stuff up, right? Sometimes the user story, the requirement document, is not comprehensive enough to cover off on that. So we have to make something up. And maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. And if it doesn't work, then we'll reverse engineer from implementation back to design and we'll go in there and fix it. But I think we'll probably get it right the first time because I'll tell you what's the right answer and I want to get this moving forward. Where did I put my map? Can I close my mind map? Maybe I did. All right. So mind manager 21. Yay. We'll be there in a second, ladies and gentlemen. Hang on. Where's my mind map for this course? I just want to capture some of these points because they're going to be quite valuable when you're doing this. All right, 23 minutes to go. Let's keep going here. So I have to go back to my lexical analysis. Save that. Make sure we save that. Is there anything else we need here? So with regards to the data records, so that's what I was saying. I'm inventing this concept of a data record. It didn't really talk about a data record here, but it talks about employees, and we can sort of, as analysts, we can consider we need a container to put employees into. And we talked last week how service-oriented architectures are basically about data and services, and they're wrapping them up in containers, and they're connecting communication conduits between them. The whole of service-oriented architecture can be summarized in that one sentence. I'm going to put that in my book. That's a good sentence. Sounds like a good test question to me, by the way. We talked about it last week in a lot of depth, but this is just sort of it's a nice summary I just came up with. Having data and services, because if we don't have data, we don't have anything to process, and services are the intentionalities of what we're going to do with processing that data. Capture, which describe, which encapsulate the intentions of what we want to do with that data. And then putting those data and services into boxes. And creating communication conduits between the boxes. Conduits between the boxes to ship the service delivery and the data around to the part of the system where it needs to be. Now, if you replace boxes in the above sentence, with Java SOA, service-oriented architecture beans, you are now starting to glimmer at what a service-oriented architecture means. Glimmer is like, I don't know, it's an English word. You know when somebody just wakes up in the morning and they open their eyes a little and you just see the light shining off the whites of their eyes? That's a glimmer. When you say glimmer, it just means starting to grasp it a little bit. Glimmer a little bit. Of what a service-oriented architecture means. All right, I have another 20 minutes, so let's keep trucking along. So let's go back to our little tablet where we're writing things down here. Do I have everything I need to know now to start doing the UML analysis? Well, we're providing a user portal. It might be an iPhone app. It might be a web page. It might be something on an Apple wristwatch. It's a user portal. That's the most abstract description we can give of it. And it's going to perform the following functionalities with regards to the data records for all employees of the Canadian manufacturing enterprise. So we're going to have to design a schema at some point, maybe a set of relational database tables, maybe. So the system shall provide a user portal which provisions the following functionality. With regards to data records for all employees of Canadian hardware manufacturing, we're to be able to add records, edit records, not delete records. We'll put that there because maybe somebody will think later we forgot to say it. Search records. How are we going to search them? Well, I guess we need to make that part up, maybe by employee number or employee name, and generate detailed reports. We need to provision access control for generating resources. And once again, I'm kind of curious. They're not giving us an instruction on how that's going to work. Well, maybe all records. Let's start broad and let them correct us later. Let's say that only a manager can access the records. And if they want to get more fine grain, let's say that only a manager, sorry, because I'm doing hand gestures to help you understand this. Let's say that only a manager can access records. They either access all of them or none of them. If they want to make it more fine-grained later on, we can add that in. So let's make our own requirement now and say managers will receive a user ID and password that will allow controlled access to the employee records. To the employee records. All right, so I guess we've taken care of that, so we can erase that now. We've simplified our we've changed the words around to say what we wanted to do. And the data store is a single secure database. Well, I'm going to say that's kind of a useless statement now because we already have ACL, and we would not in general have a reason to think there would be 2 or 3 databases. So again, we can get rid of that. That doesn't add any knowledge to our table of knowledge right now. And the user interface will be a internet web portal, which provides all functionality. All right, so that's good. The reports are, yeah, so again, I don't think we need that last statement. So does everybody see what we did now? We have created a single concise description, which we can now go and generate into UML. Is there anything else in the instruction I need to keep track of? I'm already up to 45 minutes on my video. It's going to take a while. It'll probably be tomorrow morning because it's available, because that long a video takes a while to process. So resume share. Resume share. Why is the share not resuming? Did I lose my meeting? Oh, geez, where's my meeting? Christ, I think I closed the meeting. Oh no, the meeting's here. I'm starting to imagine things, I think. All right, so share screen. And put this away for now. I don't think I need this at the minute. So how do we go from this to UML? Let's use our drawing tool of draw.io. They say Visio in the instructions. If you have Visio, go for it. I don't have Visio, but I like draw.io. I think it does the job well. And I like to see everything on one screen. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go to draw.io. So we'll say http draw.io. And we're going to make a new diagram. So we'll say create new diagram. And they do have options here for UML. Honestly, I suggest you don't use that. I suggest just make a blank diagram. If you want to play with the UML, go for it. But they give you too many choices. It makes it needlessly confusing. UML is extremely simple, right? Once you see one, which we're going to do in the next 3 minutes, you're going to be away to the races. You'll be no problem on this. So let's go and do that. So I'm going to say blank diagram and create. And you can store it on Google Cloud, but I like to store it on local device. I just think it's less confusing. And I'm going to store it in your Dropbox Cloud folder. So we're going to say assignment 1, initial UML diagram. And it's like anything. You might have to do it 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times to get it right. But if you're one of my students who's desiring to get the IT job, then I'm going to advise it's a good idea to really do this as many times as necessary to get it. And I'm going to save it as a PNG, because PNG is something I can import into my Word or my LaTeX or something. So we'll say editable PNG. It's like JPEG, but it's a newer format of image. And we'll say create. Now I'm going to paste my descriptions, which I brought from my other thing here. That's because I'm screen sharing. The way I would probably really do it is I have 2 monitors. I would read it on one monitor and I'd work on another monitor. But for you guys over the web meeting, I just want to keep everything together. So I'm going to drop a text box here. And I'm going to paste my requirements in there. And then we're going to go. We're going to see how to do this. Now, so remember what we said, and if you've watched my video on lexical analysis, you will understand what I'm saying. And if you do not understand what I'm saying, watch that video, because I spend about 30 minutes in that video breaking this apart in very little bits and pieces. If you have any questions, email, Zoom call, I'm available, but you have to ask me. I don't know what's going on inside your brain. I don't really know what you're understanding and not understanding. So you're the one who's responsible. Yes, you exactly. I'm talking to you. You're responsible for letting me know if you need more level of detail on this. So we're looking for nouns. We're looking for thing word. Whoops, I'm not sharing my camera again. We're looking for nouns. We're looking for thing words. So let's find them. Well, a user portal is a thing word. And a data record is a thing word. I think it is. It's not a tangible necessarily like a table, but a data record is a thing. If you don't believe me, then believe me, it is. And the fact that it's about all Canadian employees will become relevant later on, but not right at this minute. And what actions? So now I have some actions. Add, edit, delete, search, generate detailed reports. So let's use red as our special color for actions. So now I have some things and I have some actions. And access control, we're going to get to this stuff in a minute. So what I have time to do in the next 5 minutes is get you started. I want you to work on it by yourself tonight or tomorrow morning. I'm going to send you a video to finish it off. And I'm going to suggest that we make the assignment due next week. And I'll write this up in your FOL later tonight or tomorrow morning. But let's make assignment due next week. And remember, your midterm test is next week as well. And I will send out in my video, I'll talk about it. And I'll highlight the study prep questions. But if you watch that video, you'll be fine. Plus, if you've been in class, if you've been listening, if you've been reading all the stuff I sent, you'll be fine. And if you haven't been, well, you have a week, so crack the books and do it. Make a Zoom call with me if you need more help. But this is not hard. This is actually a handful of basic principles. And it's like when you were a child, right? Sometimes you do these little things. Maybe your mother, somebody gives you some little bits of cloth and you just sew them together to make a little blanket or something. That's what we're doing here. We're taking little bits of code and we're connecting them and we're making a big architecture out of many small little things. And I don't think it's hard, really. I think once you get your mind into the modality of it, it's okay. Now, it's 5 minutes to 8, so just give me 5 more minutes. Maybe I can do one of these here. So how do I make a UML entity? Well, a couple of ways, but I just like to go and make a simple rectangle right here. So I'm going to make a rectangle. And I'm going to give it a name. And my entity here, we're going to call it user portal. Do not call it website or iPhone screen because it could be a bunch of things. But it is a user. It's a thing for mediating connections with a user. It's a user portal. So a UML entity needs a name. There it is. And it needs data. And it needs methods. Well, what do you suppose the data for our user portal is going to be? How about data records? Now, how are we going to get the data records into our portal? Have any of you guys wondered how are we going to get the data records into our portal? Have you wondered about that yet? I'm down to 17 participants. Ah! Why aren't they listening to my class? Am I boring? Am I losing my mojo? It's okay, Peter. Breathe, breathe. You'll be fine. Now, are any of you wondering, by the way, I'm supposed to go through this process of taking attendance, and I guess I'm going to start doing this next week. I just think our class time is so important that I want to be very respectful of our class time. But I guess maybe I do need to do that. But for right now, I'm just going to take a screenshot of the participants list, And when they ask me who was in class, I'm going to say, well, all 17 of them were. That's my attendance. That's sad, but that's what it is. Okay, I have 2 more minutes. What I was going to ask you guys is if you were wondering how we're going to connect the employee records to the portal, and my answer is we don't think about that. We're in design phase. We're thinking about intentionalities. It's enough to know that we want to do it. How we do it comes at implementation time. And that's not even on this assignment. That's when we write the Java code. That's the next assignment. All right, I have 1 more minute, so let's use our time wisely here. So I have a user portal, and in my user portal, I have some data records. All right, well, that sounds good. Let's have them. And for all employees, that is not relevant right now. That's when we, by the way, we are going to go and construct another object called a Datastore. And I prefer the generic term Datastore to database because I don't really know right now that it is going to be a database. It might be something else. It might be like a cloud-based thing or something. So let's use the generic term Datastore. And our Datastore is going to have, well, it's going to have a schema. It's going to have all of these things we want to know about our people. So have we consumed all of the information out of the description yet? No, because there's more stuff here we need. Guys, I'm going to make a video on this. It's 8 o'clock, and even if we were in class together, it would realistically take 4 or 5 hours to completely go through this. I think we did a good job, right? So we have our test next week, and we want to get our assignment done. And my way of helping you is I'm going to make a video which is going to cover off the amount of time we need. But now you have the basics. Now you're at the point where you can understand the video. If I would have sent it out last week without this background, you wouldn't have been able to process it, but now you can. So that's what we're going to do.